First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of NFP, the fifth largest insurance broker in the world, combining local expertise with access to global capabilities and solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
The tranquil sounds of nature, music to Steve Simon's ears, about as much so as listening to the Grateful Dead. A complete contradiction to the commotion after an NBA thriller. Steve Simon was in his early 30s when Reggie Miller hit that playoff game winner. Now, 25 years later, he is in line to take over ownership of the Indiana Pacers from his dad, Herb Simon. And Steve is already making his mark in the locker room.
You know, I asked him to come in and say a few words to the team after the game. And he was great. He was just phenomenal. He thanked the guys for their competitive spirit, their fight, talked about the future and how the struggles we've gone through this year are going to bear fruit going forward.
Steve Simon on what's next for the Pacers, life growing up in a high-profile family, and why he finds solace and comfort in the waves of the ocean, the wind whipping through the trees, and the majesty of the mountains. He's my guest on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Steve Simon's first taste of the business world came when he was just 7 years old. He was jetting around the country in the family's private plane, tagging along on Dad Herb's business trips, absorbing how real estate and shopping mall development worked. He graduated from North Central High School and earned a degree from IU. He's not a traditional suit and tie guy. And boardroom meetings, all that jumping into the family business would have to wait. Steve found his passion in exploring and experiencing life through his love for the environment and culture. Took a boat trip around the world with a buddy, hiked for weeks in New Zealand, and followed the Grateful Dead for years. Yes, he was, and still is, a deadhead. But eventually, Steve came back home to the Simon family business. Now he runs a private equity firm in Silicon Valley. A staunch advocate for preserving the environment, a philanthropist, and a man moving forward to take ownership of the Indiana Pacers. And Steve Simon, it is a real treat to have you join me on the podcast this week. How are you?
I'm doing well, Gary. Nice to be with you. Pleasure.
Good to be with you as well. You know, you don't do many interviews, so I really do feel honored that you'll take the time. You kind of fly below the radar screen, don't you? Is that by design?
You know, I mean, a little bit. Historically, I think a little bit, but no, it's a pleasure to be with you. By the way, you do a great job. And
thank you.
Some of my, I've stopped listening to so much news and let go of some of my needing to keep up on things and my hypervigilance. So I've been listening to podcasts, including yours, and I've loved it. I've got to hear from some friends and colleagues and partners, and you do a great job.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And, everyone knows the Simon name. A lot of people don't know a lot about you. I know in doing some research and talking to some mutual friends, that you're described in a number of ways: smart, quirky, introspective. But one that I think is interesting is I'm going to try to give people a feel for who you are. More than one person has talked about the fact that you care about things. You really have a big heart. How do you react to that?
That's nice to hear from people. Yeah, I think I do care a lot about things. I care a lot about the amazing state of Indiana, where I'm back all the time, and I grew up, and I'm a Hoosier through and through, and there's a lot of stuff I care about, the family cares about, that we get to, such a great platform to get to participate in, helping people and being a part of, great organizations and being connected to people. It's, it feels great.
Yeah. One of your passions is the environment. I would consider, based on what, I've seen and heard, you are an environmentalist. Where did that passion for the environment come from?
I think it came from Sheila Simon, my mother,
Huh.
my dear mother, who's 83 and still enjoying she lives in the city. She's just been a city lady in San Francisco for a long time. But, Herb and Sheila, loved taking us to, Eagle Creek Park way back in the day. And then we were fortunate, some dear friends of ours, the Alperins, moved to a beautiful little place, much smaller back then, Aspen, Colorado, when we were 5 or 6 years old. And we went to visit them, and being in the mountains and that beauty. And, I get to travel around a lot, just loving the outdoors and realizing how precious it is, is definitely, I think that was the seed early on for sure.
And you have been known, but you'll go hiking for maybe a couple of weeks at places around the world to really get out and engage and enjoy the great outdoors.
It's been a while since I've been out that long, but yeah, I've had a lot of great outdoor adventures and some great friends who are way more versed in the backcountry to take us camping and spend real time out there to get away from, in this day and age, right? We have our devices and we have, the pull of a lot of things. So it's a joy. It's less often, but near and dear to my heart for sure.
Yeah. And you and your family have been such benefactors to Indiana. And one area I know you're engaged with is the Indiana Land Trust, which obviously connects to that environmental passion that you have.
Yeah. It's been great to be involved with CELTI, Central Indiana Land Trust, and Cliff Chapman, and just a bunch of committed board members and staff who are, I think been really impactful here in Central Indiana and a little bit beyond, and working with people like the governor and, the state to protect land and make it available for people to enjoy. And it's been great to be involved.
Another passion of yours is music. I did my research. I know you're a Deadhead, right? You used to follow the Grateful Dead around the country a little bit.
They're still in my head all the time. But yeah, you have
a favorite Grateful Dead song?
If I had to pick one, it'd be "Eyes of the World," which is a beautiful song. But yeah, I'm lucky. Now, I didn't help my studies, didn't help my diligence back in the day, but I got to see a lot of Dead shows and connect to community and music and a shared experience. Yeah, it was great.
Now, you mentioned you are a Hoosier. You certainly grew up here, but you moved to San Francisco. How long has it been now? 20 years?
Yeah, it's been over 20 years. I moved to San Francisco for a variety of reasons. Now I live in Marin County, which is just north, with my family. And, I had some business mentors out here at the time. My mother moved here long ago, had some other friends, and some of my interests were out here. So I moved long ago. And I'll tell you though, Gary, the more I've been away a long time, I get to come back so often, like as much as I can, less in the pandemic, but the longer I'm gone, the more connected and rooting for and appreciative of Indiana, the Midwest, of Hoosier hospitality, the way we work together. That is different than a lot of places. And our DNA of the city and the state and Hoosiers and that kind of community becomes more and more, inside me and resonates more and more.
I think that's really interesting to hear you say that, because you obviously live in San Francisco, but have that affinity and that connection to Indiana, and it has grown stronger over the years, I guess, as you suggest. What is it about Indiana that really makes it a special place to a lot of people, but a special place to you?
And I think it's my roots. It's in my DNA. I think it's the people. This, the state and the city with so many great champions has evolved in so many ways from the early days when certainly, Herb and Mel came from New York and just so many iterations and evolutions of the city and all its great equity and connectivity. But it really goes back to the people and their care for their state and each other. Sometimes I say that elsewhere and people, it sounds a little hokey. Like there is some almost secret DNA and sort of mojo of like Hoosier hospitality and people working, collectively that I think is not like at least any other place I've been to.
Well, you certainly grew up around the mall and development business, watching your dad Herb and your uncle Mel build an incredible company and give back to this community and this state in so many ways. To be sure, again, reading some background on you, Steve, I thought it was so interesting, and I could kind of visualize you as I read about you flying around with your dad and your uncle as they built the company and going to places around the company. So you kind of got it as a very young child, got an up close personal look at the business. How did that shape you, or did it?
That's a good question. Yeah, they did. They would run me around occasionally with them, including an early meeting with Herb in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which, you think of these sort of moments that you have some yuck. Well, I spilled a Coke all over his development plans in Fond du Lac when I was a little kid. And I remember that, like, wanting to feel a part of, and he gave me a Coke, which was a big thing back then, and I spilled it. But I don't know, I never thought I would be, certainly in that business, which I did earlier in my career, and probably finding as much passion and excitement around business and investments and deals. But I think what stuck with me is the way, Mel and Herb did business, how they connected with people, how they were partners to people in good time and, good times and times that weren't so good. So I think subconsciously, without knowing that, like the way they carry themselves, their integrity, the way they enjoyed it and brought themselves to it, I think that probably did, stick with me a bit for sure.
Yeah. And like you, your dad has worn his affinity, his love for Indianapolis and Indiana on his sleeve. I mean, I talk about, he's grew up in New York, but I think Brooklyn, but considers himself a Hoosier. So he has that connection to Indiana and Indianapolis as well.
I mean, he's always said, and it's just deep in his truth and meaning, like the greatest thing that ever happened to him is Mel plucking him out of probably ending up in the garment district in New York, and perchance, right? Mel got out of the Army at Fort Bend, and Herb, just newly married, maybe not even married to my mom, Sheila, came, almost sight unseen to Indianapolis. And I think he's always said, if you look at the body of work of how the city and the state have been just a great canvas and a great partnership, like he's always like entirely and forever indebted to having this as a place to build a family, build a business, make deep connections, and certainly try to give back. But, he always says the city, and the state have been better to me than I've been to it. So, yeah.
Well, you were in the family business for a while, but you made the conscious decision that you wanted to kind of chart your own course, I guess, and went a different route. And and you wanted to do it away from Indiana or away from Indianapolis. You moved to San Francisco, and you go into heading a private equity firm there and have a successful firm for a number of years now. Was it important for you to, again, kind of chart your own path and to do it outside of Indiana?
I think, for my own maturation, like I could always come back and enjoy Indiana, but if I never, left and had a different experience, it might be a little limited. I think, initially, as a kid, and when Mel and Herb about the Pacers, I had some level of discomfort with that notoriety and that attention to the family. I was did leasing and development work with pre-Simon Property Group, and then after the company went public. And I think I was competent at it, but it didn't speak to me deeply. I got to work with a lot of great merchants and operators and folks that, that became important to me, but it wasn't quite my thing. And I think leaving just to have a different, experience was important.
You're obviously part of a succession plan that will one day make you the owner and the leader of the Indiana Pacers. Thinking back, I guess you would have been a teenager, right, when Mel and Herb bought the Pacers, yeah. Right? Was it 83? Yeah. And literally, I mean, it's certainly not an overstatement, because I can remember back then, there was real risk of Indiana or Indianapolis losing the Pacers and not having that team that has meant so much to the community. What do you remember? You said the notoriety maybe was a little discomforting. But what do you remember about when they bought the team? What that was like for you as a teenager?
I think with my sometimes nervous disposition, it worried me to some degree. But I mean, if you think back, really, people like Jim Morris and others, have been great champions of the city, I think came to Herb and Mel and said, look, it's and it's so true. Like, it is such a beautiful, important community asset that we've been, it's been a pleasure to be, part of, a steward of. And they were like, of course, they were mostly stickball players. I think Mel played a little bit of basketball. Herb Simon did not play basketball, but they're mostly stickball players from the Bronx. But I think it was like, sure, we want to be helpful, and and it's just been, I think, really fortuitous. So I remember I didn't go to opening night because we have all this historical thing, right? We've captured with the tuxes. I went to I'm going to out Janet Kinney, who I haven't talked to in a long time, but I went to my junior prom with Janet Kinney instead of going to that beautiful opening game where there's a classic picture of them holding the ball. But over time, of course, like, it has, become so important and so meaningful to myself and the entire family. And it's, been lucky to be involved for many, many years. And, the early days were, just happened. It just sort of happened.
How do you describe to folks who aren't from Indiana the importance of the Pacers franchise? Obviously, basketball is an important part of the fabric of Indiana, but the Pacers are such an important part. Professional franchises in many cities are important, but it just seems like there's a special sauce, especially to that relationship between the Pacers and the city, and the Pacers and the state. Being in obviously very close to it, how do you describe that relationship between the team, the franchise, and the community?
I think it's so multifaceted. It brings people together from different walks of life to root and be a part of a common thing. Again, we've had some great, we've had some success. We want to have some more success. We want to give the fans a winner. We're excited about the future, and we want to give the fans a really competitive team. But I think there's that fabric of it brings people together. It's certainly as stewards of the of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and the history of that building being a community asset. How can we give back in the community? There's certainly tax generation, economic contribution. That'll be excited about amplifying even more. As the building continues to get renovated and modernized, which we're excited about, but still keeping the guts of we think is the best basketball arena. And then we're lucky, fortunate to get to host All-Star in 24 and have that be another bring the world to Indianapolis, also economic contribution. But the idea of to bring the world there and showcase this intimate, beautiful, multifaceted city, it is part of the fabric that I think makes it, rich and additive to the city and the state and the people it gets to touch, that, the organization, how do we build more belongingness and culture and service to the community? So I think it's a bunch of things.
And I think it's interesting too, that next iteration, if you will, of commitment to community and being that gathering place, the improvements inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, but also outside with the plaza area. So as you look ahead, how do you view that development and what that will become? Because I think that is going to be kind of one of those next great areas of downtown. It's really going to be transformative, I think, for that Near East Side.
I think it's going to be great. Yeah, we've wanted to sort of open it up for a long time, and we found a great combination of, again, sort of cooperative public-private partnership to add this last phase. We're doing more things to the building, to the balcony. We've done a lot of stuff. We'll continue to do that. But this Unity Plaza, right, which talks about how do we bind people together? How do we activate? How does that open it up to what's going to go on ultimately? City County Council building and the jail site. How does it connect up to, all the stuff that's been going on, linking everything in the city that is connected together? And I think coming out of COVID and the pandemic, how do we activate more? How do we bring more art, activation, community, and celebration? I think it's a piece of a puzzle of the next iteration of this very communal and activated city. Yeah.
It's very obvious that you're connected to Indianapolis. You know what's going on. What's your take on the future of downtown? It's had a tremendous ride for multiple decades, and again, transformation, if you will. A lot of articles written about it being such a shining star in the Midwest. What's next? Indianapolis and other cities face challenges going forward. What's your take on downtown Indianapolis and the future of downtown?
I mean, I think the future's bright. All cities are, in some ways reinventing themselves coming out of COVID, but there's been so many, there's so many great things happening. How do we continue to add to it, with, a lot of there's sports tech investment, there's Salesforce's presence, and, what Scott Dorsey and others, High Alpha's doing to bring, other sort of modern, diversified sort of business and diversity of people downtown to build on the great, I think the pedigree of great corporate partners there. We got, the NCAA's there, the Colts, the Pacers. There's a mix of things. It's not, I think the city has evolved so much. So I think there's just adding continued elements of what is the next iteration of, work and play and corporate activation and more arts and more all the stuff that's been built, more stuff.
Hey, before we go to the break, I want to get your take on the Pacers on court. Just wrapped up an important draft. Got a lot of, I think it's one of the most athletic teams that I can recall for the Pacers. But your take, what do you think about the team that's been pieced together here, and what can fans expect on the court?
I mean, I think, we're all excited. I think, Kevin and Chad and Kelly and Ryan and Ted and all those guys put together a really great draft. We're excited about, we're excited. I think Ben is going to be a really exciting player. Andrew and Kendall are other pieces of the puzzle to go along with, we got excitement. We made some changes thoughtfully. There's great folks we're developing. We got Tyrese and Chris and Isaiah and a bunch of young folks and other great talent. And, I think what we're telling the fans is, look, it's going to take a little bit of time. We have a strategy in place. We have the pieces in place. We've mostly always been competitive, and that hasn't been the case in the last couple of years, but we're going to have an exciting, dynamic team that's fun to watch. We're going to get better, and we're convicted to build a really good, competitive, knock on wood, championship caliber team. And I think we got some great young talent and some great veterans. And, the great thing is the fans deserve a winner, right? And that's our job, is to give them that. The other thing, though, is the people who we've had around the team are also people who want to be here, right? Generally, who represent the brand and the city and everybody well. And so I think, the other thing, the collective of things is, how do we build belongingness and culture and folks involved who are care for each other and want to be here and represent the city and the town and the brand the right way. So, I mean, I think we want to get better. We're going to get better. We're going to get better. We're convicted to do that. And also we have, we've been really fortunate to have players who want to be here and, are so part of what we're doing and represent us and in the way that fans should be really excited and proud about.
We will continue our conversation with Steve Simon, a lot more in the second half of our podcast, including his thoughts on the future of the Indiana Pacers franchise and much more. Stay with us as the Business and Beyond podcast continues.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of National Financial Partners, the fifth largest insurance broker and consultant in the world. Develop your total reward strategies, all in one place with the combination of First Person's local expertise and NFP's global resources and integrated solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week, Steve Simon, coming to us from his home in the San Francisco area. I have got to ask you, you are a Pacer fan. You've got a Pacer jersey on as we speak, which I think is great. As you've been so close to the franchise, do you have a favorite memory, Pacer memory? I want to ask you about your biggest maybe thrill as a fan and disappointment. What would be a highlight? Can you pick one moment out that you really remember?
I can pick one that is etched in my brain, which is was that 98 when it's very famous when Jordan Reggie taps
allegedly. Yeah, that's right.
And hits that three. This is back in the day. Now, we don't sit together anymore. Back in the day, I think we all sat together, but when that shot was hit, it was incredibly exciting. And then if anyone remembers that clip is played all the time, but when Jordan came back down and almost hit a game winner with almost no time left.
Yes.
My father, who was so excited after Reggie hit the shot, he collapsed in his seat and I thought he had a heart attack. And then when the rimmed out, like it seemed like a longer period, but it was just a moment. I thought he had a heart attack and then he popped up and he went crazy and he was dancing around. And that was a great moment. Now, I cried after, Game 7 when we lost, but that was a great moment. We've had so many great moments and it's been, it's been such a pleasure. I think it must have been the same year. My brain is not that good, but we were up 4 or 5 with 6 minutes left in Chicago. I remember after that game, the idea of beating Michael, who was, is transcendent in every way. And, I went back, I don't know, before at halftime, I was smoking with Slick, we would nervously smoke. But I remember after that game, I was so emotional. I cried because we were so close. We've had a lot of great memories and we want to, importantly, we want to make new memories, right? For our fans to enjoy, all the history and the great moments are great and speak to our basketball pedigree and richness, but we want to make new memories that are meaningful like that.
Yep. You will obviously be a big part of that process going forward as you take over ownership of the team. But maybe a lot of people in Indianapolis may not know that you've been very involved, certainly with the franchise for a long time now. Can you talk about or give people an idea of the connection, the direct connection in so many ways that you've had with the franchise for a number of years?
It was probably a couple of years before we before we built then Conseco Fieldhouse. I got involved, in the anticipation of a new building. Market Square Arena was so loud and had so many memories, but in that, transition to this great building we've had, for 22 plus years. So I got involved, a couple of years before that, and in some capacity have been involved ever since. And it's been a joy. Yeah. I get to, how do we think about our strategy? How do we, how do we bring people together? How do we build culture? How do we evolve the way we're doing business? And it's been a long time. I've got the pleasure to, be a part of it from an ownership standpoint and work with an incredible management team and be additive where I can and supportive and be a cheerleader. And so it's been a long time, a long chunk of my life, but we never felt the need to tell anyone about my involvement. So
yeah,
it's been a long time. Yeah.
What you've contributed in so many ways, among them, and there's a name for it, an acronym for it that I can't remember, but the Pacers in the wake of the George Floyd murder really were out front as a team in putting together an equity and inclusion plan for the team, the community, all those types of things. And you, as I understand it, you really took a lead role in that.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an emotional time. I think all of us continuing to learn and grow and become more self-aware and look at our biases and look how we're connecting as an organization, look at the diversity of our talent. So I think our commitment to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yeah. Yeah.
And making impact both organizationally and in the community, I think dawned on all of us, even though I think we showed up in a lot of ways to support a lot of great causes. And in the wake of George Floyd's murder, like, how do we, in an intimate and sometimes uncomfortable way, organizationally and, and culturally look at what we're doing and how we can evolve ourselves and evolve the way we're showing up and build a diverse organization and help folks who aren't as fortunate. There's a lot of need out there. And so I think that was a moment that catalyzed the organization. And, there's not, we're doing a lot of stuff, but our job is to not talk about it, but just to live it and do it. And it's a long-term, conviction to continue to step up in more and more ways.
As you look at your leadership mantra, what you will really put forth with the Pacers organization, community engagement. I know technology is a big, has been, as I understand, a big focus of yours with the team, and how you can use technology to engage fans and those types of things. Is technology going to be a big part of from a strategy standpoint as you look forward to the Pacers?
I think, look, any modern business, modern consumer, anyone, is engaging in technology in such a fundamental way. There's a lot of implications of that, but yeah, I mean, how we're investing, how we're innovating and investing internally, how are we doing it, with other partnerships and relationships like Techstars or Sapphire Sports, and how are we going to continue to use technology and insight and data to, ultimately it gets back to how do we make more emotive, deep connections with our fans and tell compelling stories. But technology is enabling us to how we evolve in the way we're doing business practices. We're getting, more strategic and more data driven, but really it speaks to how do we connect with our fans and our customers and our partners in a more meaningful way. Technology is a vehicle to, I feel at least, make deeper connections. And so, yeah, it's important. Sure.
Yeah. Pacer fans are going to want to know what kind of an owner is Steve Simon going to be? How would you describe your style, the thought process? What would you say to those inquiring Pacer fans who are wondering about your ownership style?
It's the same ownership style I think I've been employing. Like, how do I be myself? Right? How do I continue to learn and grow? Always have smarter people around me. How do I listen better? I'm always working on how do I listen better, and bring more compassion to various roles. I get to do a lot of different things, beyond Pacer Sports Entertainment, and it's fortunate. So how do I bring my authentic self? And I think, as a boss or an owner or someone who's leading people, like, how do I show my own frailties, admit my mistakes, and continue to radically learn and get better? And I think that gives people, around you the ability to admit their frailties, get to know themselves better, ultimately be more connected to themselves and other folks, and be better, more effective leaders and contributing to an organization. So I think it's touchy-feely stuff, but this is sort of the way I think about it. As an owner, as someone who, can be helpful to folks and be a part of a team, right? How do you be a part of the team?
Yeah, I read a quote in an article from NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who said, in many ways, and he had many nice things to say about you. He said, in many ways, or some ways, I think that Steve will be Herb Simon 2.0 from an ownership standpoint. Agree with that? Disagree? What's your take on
it? I'd not heard that from Adam. By the way, talk about someone to emulate, the right kind of modern leader who's, again, same time, learning, growing. And so, to take what Herb's done, the way he treats people, the way he's compassionate and allows folks to operate without micromanagement. Certainly a lot of those things are very similar to, our styles, which, have a lot of similarity. There's some differences, but, if I can take the the bedrock of my dad, which he's always wants to be the best partner. And, he taught me this long ago in business. Like, I was doing these, big box leases. And I remember he told me this a long time ago, like, you're making a deal with Burlington Coat Factory, TJ Maxx. Like, yeah, you can do a $650 or $850 net lease deal. Why don't you do an $8 deal? Have the guy feel good. And then you'll do 6 or 7 other leases for that guy. Something that it's not verbatim, but he told me that a long time ago. And really that's the way he's done things. Sometimes I feel like he's as generous and supportive as possible. So if I take that kernel, which I think all his children have about trying to be, as a good a partner as possible and do it my own way, certain things I do differently and, more sort of detailed and specific about than him, which is my own thing, then I think I'll be okay.
Looking forward, you spend a lot of time, obviously, and travel back to Indianapolis and Indiana a lot. Do you anticipate spending more time in Indianapolis going forward?
Yeah, I do. The pandemic has, even though I've been back many, many times, and having a young family, like how do I be in my own communities out here? How do I be a present father and balance everything for my own, mental health? But yeah, I have so much stuff I care about and that we're privileged to be involved with in Indianapolis and Indiana. And I want to be there more and look forward to that. Yeah, of course.
Steve Simon, it's been a real treat for you to join me on the Business and Beyond podcast. I look forward to connecting with you more in the future and watching you as you continue your career and that connection to Indianapolis and the Indiana Pacers. All the best to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Gary. Really pleasure. I love what you're doing, and you've been doing so many great things in this community for so long. So I really appreciate it. Great to hang with you. Take care.
Thank you. Steve Simon on the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download it and download all of our episodes at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.